Hi, this is Jim from Safety Wars. Before we start the program, I want to make sure everyone understands that we often talk about OSHA and EPA citations, along with some other regulatory actions from other agencies, legal cases, and criminal activity. Everyone is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Proposed fines are exactly that, and they are often litigated, reduced, or vacated. We use available public records, news accounts, and press releases. We cannot warranty or guarantee the details of any of the stories we share, since we are not directly involved with these stories, at least not most of the time. Enjoy the show.
This show is brought to you by Safety FM.
Hi, this is Jim from Safety Wars. Welcome to the program. We have a real treat for you tonight. We have Gavin Coyle, who I interviewed several weeks ago. His new book, Workplace Safety on a Budget, How to Stop and Prevent Accidents and Injuries Without Sacrificing the Bottom Line. He was on the program. We interviewed him for about 45 minutes, roughly. This is the interview in total. We did very little editing here. So his website is Gavin, Gavin, Coyle, Coyle.com. You'll please give us a little bit of leeway here. He was in Ireland at the time, which was his home, and there's a little bit of a delay sometimes in the conversation here. But I tell you what, we learned a lot here, and I think you will learn a lot. So, looking forward to getting some feedback here. I hope to have Gavin on again. That's Gavin-Coyle.com. The book is Workplace Safety on a Budget by Gavin Coyle. So, we will see you back again next week. So how did you get into the safety business, Gavin?
So when I left school at the age of 17, at the time, there was a massive influx of multinational American companies that were getting a foothold into the European market, and obviously Ireland was the first land base that they hit. So we had the likes of Apple, Warner Lambert, which is now Pfizer's, GlaxoSmithKline Beecham, the list is endless, Hewlett Packard, Compaq, Intel, and they were building like large hyperscale projects, so a couple of thousand people on the projects, and they were bringing with them their models. And of course they brought with them their safety model, and one of their safety models was that you had to have full-time safety people in each company that was operating on the project, and that was a new thing in Ireland at the time.
Really?
We didn't do that. It was like
well, I know in the it sounds like you're like the mid-90s you're talking about.
Early 90s. Early 90s. It was like 92, 90. Like we had our legislation at that time was 1989, and before that was back in the 50s, 60s. It was a Factory Act. Right. So it's obviously been updated since, but the requirement for the full-time safety officer was not in law.
Yeah, because I know it was a huge influx of American companies over there.
Yes.
The legislation there was, because even if you recall, the Tour de France was even held, and one stage was held in Ireland.
That's right. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. That's very true. Yeah. That's good call, Jim. But I suppose the company that I was working for was doing drywall, but they were also doing clean room fit outs. So right. they were right at the core edge of all this work, because obviously Intel had massive clean rooms to be built. There was all these pharmaceuticals that had clean rooms to be built. So the kind of the drywall mentality, or the carpenter mentality, kind of fits into that whole clean room sort of building walls and ceilings and stuff like that. It just happens to be metal rather than wood. So they were at the forefront, the company I was working for, and so the guys just basically pointed the finger at me and said, "Look, you're going to do safety because we don't have time, and we don't fully understand what they're actually looking for here. But you just go in and do it." So we did the first safety meeting and kind of fell in love with it. Said, "Look here, the concept of making people safe and assessing risk, really sort of, I kind of had a graw for it, if you like." And so the company then started using me to go out and look after all of their projects. They might have had 15 projects, 20 projects, and I would just go around to all the projects in Europe and I would report on them, and I would train staff and train managers and train them on the manuals, and so trying to update the manuals as well.
So how was the response that you received? I know in this country, the big safety legislation that came out was with the Occupational Safety and Health Act in 1970, and then what happened wasn't until really HAZWOPER hit, which is Hazardous Waste Site Operations and Emergency Response, at least in the country, Metro New York City. That's when safety really became a big thing. Because when that law came out, it was all these hazardous waste sites in the New York and New Jersey region, and then all of a sudden that's when it seemed to be getting more and more popular. And I know there was a lot of resistance, huge amounts of resistance in the early 90s, and specifically through what we call the Right to Know Acts with, safety data sheets or material safety data sheets. And was that your similar experience in your area?
Not entirely, no. I wouldn't say that it's difficult to use the word ignorance, because we're not ignorant, but there was enough money on the table for everybody to make money, to keep them out, to keep the mouths shut and just get on with it. If this is something you have to do to get on these high profile jobs, you'll do whatever you have to do, because it's going to feed your family, it's going to pay your mortgage, you're going to get nice holidays, you're going to have a great lifestyle. So what are you complaining about? And we're trying to make you safe. So it was a kind of oh my God, what's all these presentations for it? And then there was companies like J&J coming across from the US, producing this manual on incident injury free, and the concept of, every incident and accident is avoidable, which is another podcast for another day, which I don't, I could tear apart and tear asunder today. But at the time, you were thinking that these guys knew more than you, and had this wide understanding that this is how it's done. But like, when you look back at it now, it's just a marketing tool by them to sell into these companies to produce these type of data that actually didn't really mean much, because people were just filling out safety observation cards for the sake of filling them out. And then it was all about how many could you fill out in a day, in a week, and why aren't you filling out more?
And then
there's kind of stuff.
And then they're getting a 93% compliance rate, but they're still having accidents. And then when a party goes out there, there's a whole bunch of stuff that was never done.
Or and we've seen it, and I'd seen it at the time. We've 1 million hours done, and great pat in the back for a barbecue order. The next thing, one of our guys got injured, and everybody was told to keep their mouth shut, because you can't have the banner with 1 million hours and have the barbecue and everything's ordered, and yet your guy's in an ambulance. So look, we don't need to say anything to anybody about that.
One of my colleagues was on a major project that you've heard of, that pretty much everyone's heard of, and they were setting up for the safety lunch to celebrate 1 million safe hours, and an hour before the lunch, they had a fatality.
Oh my God!
Yeah, guy.
Oh my God!
And it fell from like 30. Yeah, it was about 30 floors.
Wow!
And it was just a nightmare.
Oh my God!
And
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, it's horrible.
But
all the stories I share are absolutely 100% true, but I just have to change details.
I know, yeah. Well,
and I had a conversation with someone yesterday on the project I'm working on, where it was the same deal was exactly the same deal, where they said, well, I like to have the zero accident, zero incident, zero illnesses sign, or so many hours workout. I said, totally. I ban them from any opportunity I have to ban them. I ban them. We're not tracking hours. We're not. So we all started in the behavior-based safety world, because that's what it was at that time.
Yeah.
What
really the aviation? I see the aviation industry as the real sort of go-to industry that kind of promoted safety and had that culture of, open, transparent discussion between the two guys in the cockpit. That's you're there to if there's an issue, you address it, and there's no fault or blame put on people. And I love that whole concept within the aviation industry. And it's disappointing to me that we didn't have the same sort of. I know there is companies that are trying to make that culture shift where there's an open door policy and you just put up your hand and there's no, there's no recourse for you actually making a mistake, because we make mistakes. But I think that's a podcast in itself to discuss.
So you
people's
transition. What was the big thing that made your transition with me from the behavior-based safety world into HOP, human and organizational performance, for the listeners? But your listeners should know that after 251 episodes here. Mine was with the pandemic, where I was getting away from behavior-based safety because I knew it was a bunch of baloney, right, as we call it here. And so I ran into Jay Allen with all the safety podcasts during the pandemic. We're on lockdown, and the only safety jobs that were out there, available opportunities, were pandemic related. So I ended up listening to Jay Allen and then Todd Conklin and all of that stuff. Then I made the transition into this over the last 3.5 years, roughly.
Fantastic.
Yeah. What was was there a thing where you?
Yeah, there was. So I had a personal and professional trauma, if you like. So one of the jobs that I was managing from the safety perspective, I would have been auditing that particular hotel. It was a Four Seasons hotel that was being built in Dublin at the time. And myself and the site manager had numerous conversations that we weren't happy with the health and safety of the main contractor or the principal contractor and how they were performing safety on the job. So I was going to meetings that were pretty raw every week, kind of like saying, look, this is not on. Like, there was water coming down through the building, there was nails everywhere, there was crane had dropped a couple of loads from height, and that luckily they didn't kill anybody. And they actually banned me from the meeting because they said it was disruptive. Now, I was young, I wasn't cocky, but I was young, and I probably thought, like, blah, blah, blah. So one day I was in the cabin, I got a bang on the cabin door, man down. So we went into the site, and one of our young guys had fallen headfirst into a hole and was basically kicking out for his life, trying to survive. And we got him out of the hole. I went into the ambulance with him, and it was pure carnage. And then we got to A&E, and a day later he died of his injuries. So that happened first, and then within 24 months my brother drowned along with two other young guys. They were just throwing a football to each other in waist height in the Atlantic Ocean beside the beach, and a freak wave came in and took them out to sea. And that all happened within a 24 month period, kind of. And so it kind of gave me perspective. Am I really in this safety game, and do I have the stomach for it? And at the time, there's no counselling or whatever else. Even when you think back at it now, like travelling and seeing that young lad trying to fight for his life, and then having to go through the whole process of are we going to get prosecuted if we didn't? And that's a whole other rigmarole. But it gave me I got a great life learning from it. Unfortunately, I could have done without it, but it has stuck to me in terms of, I've realised the qualities in myself that are needed for safety, such as the number one being empathy. And how do you empathise with people? How do you see things from other people's perspective? And, we don't know what people are carrying on a day-to-day basis from a personal point of view. And, we're not all at peak performance every day, and we need to be aware of that. And so when you're having conversations with people, that you're talking about them, the person first, and then you talk the technicality issues or the competency issues in terms of how they're doing their job, and approaching people like that rather than then coming in with the beaten stick. And that, we all aware of the safety person that power trips and comes in and says, banging the drum. But in most cases, those people are actually not fully confident in their own ability, and that's why they sort of lash out and use this sort of interrogating approach towards health and safety, if you like.
I call it the
draconian.
The tribunal approach.
The tribunal approach, yeah, I like that one. Yeah, could use that one, yeah. And look, I don't want to give safety people a bad rap either, because I've got a great career out of it. A lot of people have got a great career out of it, and there's fantastic people in safety. They need to be applauded, and they don't get enough credit for the amount of work and time and effort. And also, a lot of people don't really acknowledge the amount of pressure and stress that are put on safety people from a personal point of view to see these types of events and to come home and go, did I plan that job properly with the site manager? Like, am I 100% sure that everything is done according to whatever? And I remember coming off jobs and, you're actually dreaming about the job going to bed because it had got ingrained in your head so much that you were trying to solve issues on site. And a lot of people don't take that into consideration, I don't think.
Well, I think the industry itself does. No, I don't like to blame people, but the industry itself is to blame, and at least in this country, because we're not given a lot of direction. Who's this typical safety person on a construction site or a maritime environment? That's somebody who was probably in the field doing things, and then either retired or got hurt themselves a lot of times, or just got, went to safety, something different. And do they really have the skills necessary, people skills, the soft skills necessary to do the job?
Yeah, 100%, Jim.
One of the things that we try to do here, especially towards the beginning of the programs, so that we're looking back at when we first started, was, and I find myself doing this, is how do we coach the actual safety person?
Yeah.
How do we coach the actual safety person? So one of our programs is to go, and I'm mentioning this for a reason. One of our programs is, these are the types of pushback you're likely going to see as a safety professional. I went in Saul Alinsky's, you may or may not be familiar with the author, Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, which was on community organizing, and in response to a series of riots in 1968 that said, look, rather than have a riot, why don't we go into community organizing and we use these strategies to to get social change. And what I ended up doing was taking those strategies and saying, look, if you're a safety professional, these are probably what you're going to get. You're not going to get all of them. You're going to get some of them. I can't give you solutions. I could tell you what problems you have, and then you've got to try to come up with your own solutions. And one of the things that we always hear, right, that we get back, and as a segue into what is safety's too expensive.
Yeah.
Right? And with I'm looking on your website now, gavin-coyle.com, right?
Yeah.
And I'm seeing here, right, all this stuff, safety first for business growth, protecting people while driving profitability, an invaluable asset, safety as a profit center, and everything else. I mean, I know this to be true, and this is not a shit. If you have a safe company, right, and you're set up procedures and how you define safety, which is as controls and resilience and things of that nature versus the absence of accidents, safety pays for itself.
Well, that's what we wrote. I wrote the book Workplace Safety on a Budget.
That's right.
It's on Amazon, and basically that is my experiences of all the hacks that a company can use to reduce the cost of safety, but increase the standard of safety. So there's some companies are spending too much on safety and not in the right areas, and then there's some people that won't spend money on safety because they don't know what they're getting for it. Maybe in some cases they're trying to hold back because they're losing money on other areas. Safety can be done really efficiently and really well if it is put in the right context. And the context that we're talking about is, there's loads of different areas where you can save money on your business through safety. But then what we're asking is that money is repurposed back into areas that are making the best impact for your company, for quality, for production, and for safety. And so what we're asking is, rather than coming in with the compliance hat on us, yes, we'll do the compliance bit, but we want safety people to go back in to put their commercial hat on and say to the board of directors or the managing director, I think we can save ourselves up to 50% on the cost of what we're spending on safety, but I want you to repurpose that money into better equipment. I want you to pay better people, better salaries, so that we get the best of people working for our company. I want better gloves because whatever, the other ones are like, there's loads of different tools and techniques in the book that describes how that can be done.
You have to assess what the needs of the company are. But the thing is, you need to go from, I've listened to your other podcasts and everything out there.
Yeah.
You have to involve the worker in this.
Yeah.
But what will make your job easier?
Go and talk to them. They'll tell you. The guys will give it to you straight. You know what I mean? This tool doesn't work. This tool doesn't work for this job. Why are we not manufacturing this off-site and having it done? And all I have to do then is just screw it to the wall or something like that. Why am I spending half the day having to put this together? It's not cost. It's costing the company time. I'm better than this, and I can do better work than this. This is stuff that can be done offsite, and people are not challenging enough from our experience in all the different aspects of business. And we talk about the business of safety, and that's the program that we're developing at the moment. Is what is the business of safety? The business of safety is to say to yourselves, let's start calling the safety department another profit center. And that's the only way that employers are actually going to stand up and listen, and that we're going to get a seat at the table of the boardroom table where the decisions are made to discuss safety. Because as we all know, the first discussion, which is about safety and fairness to the board, they'll talk about any accidents, any incidents, man hours maybe, and what's the budget on safety, and that's it. Then they're moving on to how are we going to get new business, how are we going to scale the company and all this kind of stuff. And we want someone that has the safety voice at the boardroom table, because there is a ceiling where safety people get so far and they don't get into that conversation at the boardroom level enough or at all in most industries, and that's what's keeping safety down in my opinion. No,
your opinion is, I'm about 99% in agreement with your opinion on here. I think so. For example, my background, all right, I know just to get you an idea where I'm coming from. My background was very blue collar. My mother was a Polish immigrant. My father was first generation American here. And we had a different model of leadership when I was growing up, where it was very prescriptive, right? And as we know, the way I teach it, at least, leadership is influence. You need some soft skills. A author here, I won't mention his name, is a little bit controversial for some people, right? He had a similar background as mine. Parents were immigrants and everything else, and it was a different way of growing up, and where you worry about everything. And what happened was he went away to Brown University, and then he graduated that undergraduate. Then he went to graduate school at Harvard. Now, for your international listeners, Brown is like a middle class, what we would call a middle class university. You're a middle class in person. You're probably going to, and that's a good university, but you're probably going to go to Brown. Harvard is the elite, right? The elite. And he said the difference is that the people in that Harvard or Yale environment, and there are a number of other what we call Ivy League universities in this country, they don't think like you or I. They don't think the same way. Nothing bothers them. They work on problems. They work on solutions. Nothing bothers them for a lot of reasons. One, cultural differences. They have a safety net. Family things, but nothing bothers them. And if you can get to that point, nothing bothers you, and you're working on the problems, and you're doing it professionally, you're going to be able to do what you say, Gavin. Go into that C-suite. And I'm building on what he said. You're able to go into that C-suite. Right, CEO, CFO, all those. And you're able to communicate what you're saying.
That's the only language they understand. Look, at the end of the day, let's call a spade a spade. Let's keep health and safety simple. There's too many times health and safety is brought to the table and it's become confusing, and then people get demotivated because it's not fully clear. Are we doing it this way or are we doing it that way? Let's be very simple. Let's have our systems built around your actual business, and don't be buying in generic systems that are not tailored towards your business. a system and a culture needs to reflect the people that are in it.
I think the viewpoint a lot of times is that you have engineers and architects and construction managers. So let's say an engineer sees a problem, they fix the problem, and the problem is fixed. They don't ever have to deal with it. See, it's different. You're dealing with people. You're not dealing with machines.
Yeah.
People are people. You can fix the problem, but it could be an ongoing problem. Another issue will happen. Another issue will happen because you're dealing with a person. Things change every day. Maybe they're having a bad day. You have to be able to read the person, read the situation.
Yeah. It's not a cold solution. It's not a cold solution. Yeah. Not saying that engineers are cold, because I will tell you, a lot of brilliant safety people came through air doors that were engineers first, and then they switched over to safety, and the logic behind them, where they track everything back to a root cause, and then it's more methodical, the way they actually fix and understand root cause right the way through to where the problem was, rather than some safety people that just come out of college. And this is a problem that we've seen in air market, especially in Europe, where safety is too broad a topic, and people don't get, people come out of safety courses with diplomas or masters like myself, whatever, and really they're starting from scratch because they don't know the industry that they're going into. And this is a big problem that we see, is that there isn't safety people that have a specific focus. So we'd like to see more of two things. People that are in trades or going into engineering, that there's a year of safety within that program. But also for the safety people, we'd like to see them focusing more on an industry for safety rather than being qualified in safety. But that's another discussion for the academics another day.
For 3 or 4 hour discussion there. I know what I was trying to look for, like for my employees, my longest term employee is Bob Shackleton. Is his name? Great guy. By the way, his uncle was the other Shackleton that went down to the South Pole. So
very good.
Anyway, he like with him, he has an architectural background and construction background. He never did architecture, but he did a lot of construction. So he knows how to build things. So on a construction site, he was perfect with, this is how we build things. We understand some engineering and architectural things and everything else. And that's what I try to match up, is experience, what their real life experience is.
Yeah.
I had a corporate job before I left the corporate world and started what I'm doing here, where they made a very bad hire, in my opinion at least, where they had hired a safety professional who had never had a job outside of safety. I said, during the interview process, it was like, well, did you flip burgers when, like in college, you flip burgers at McDonald's or whatever? No, I never had a job. And then they put him into the safety field.
Yeah.
Just a nightmare. And it got so bad that I was at a facility and that he was working at, and somebody stopped me in the cafeteria and said, "Jimmy, do you have an hour to sit over, and we want to have a meeting with you?" And I said, "Okay." And I thought it was a new business meeting. And I knew we were all friends.
Yeah.
So I come into the office, and there's a long table with about 20 people on it. I'm like, man, what did I do wrong here? Did I say something wrong? Did I do something wrong? What's going? I'm in a little bit of a panic, right?
Yeah.
So no, grab a seat, grab a cup of coffee, whatever you want. We want to talk today. So, well, what's the issue here? And I said, well, we're having an issue with this one person.
Yeah.
With all the safety requirements. I said, well, you do realize he has no experience outside of safety.
Yeah.
They said, really? And I said, yeah, that's what the issue is here.
Yeah.
Not that I talk behind people's back. I don't make that as a policy. I said, but you have to approach him with that mentality that he's not sure. So maybe you have to spoon feed him a little bit on what you're doing and let him know what you're doing. That way you get everybody on the same page. And rather than an adversary, now you're a colleague.
We love to see the organic process of a tradesman in the business or a tradeswoman, and they decide then to go into safety, and that organic ecosystem of bringing people through your own company, and then if they've got a grow for safety, pull them through and get them. All right, you might be losing a really good person off the tools or whatever else, but like what you're going to get in terms of if they show a flair and a passion for safety, there's nobody that will come out of college or any other industry that's a better person than the person that has grown through your own company and understands the language of your company. You know?
Right, absolutely. So your book, what's the name of it again? Can you hold it up?
So it's Workplace Safety on a Budget.
On a budget, on Amazon.
On Amazon, yeah.
On
Amazon. It's free. The Kindle version is free, believe it or not.
Really?
Some great reviews. There's a guy who advises Toyota cars on lean principles. And he gave it a glowing review because obviously he's saying it's refreshing to see that somebody's challenging the lean aspect of safety. And, you know, because nobody wants to talk about reducing cost and safety in the same sentence, because you seem to be like, oh, where you go, you're cutting costs. That means you're cutting on safety. That's not the case. You know, what we want to do is we want one class system. There's no class system on safety. It's not a privilege to have safety. Anybody can do safety. Anybody can get the best standard of safety. And the book is trying to basically, you know, it doesn't try, but it outlines clear case studies. Like we saved one company over €1 million within their business, just using the business of safety model, whereby they had guys in holes doing work in chambers, where in fact these guys were originally employed to do overhead power line work. So they went from the top down to the bottom. And when I spoke to the individuals, they were like, yeah, like the company won this massive government contract. We all got paid more money. We got assurances that we've got, you know, longevity of work. So we kept our mouth shut and just got on with it. But he says, you know, I was employed to be a linesman. I was never employed to be in this hole doing this work. And I said, actually, to be honest with you, it's easy work. It's not competent. It's kind of like, you know, mundane, if anything. But I'm not doing what I should have been doing. So we sat down with the management and we said, look, you have all the information here. You have all the data. You've got all the hours. You've got all the costs. You've got all the material costs. You've got the labor costs. You know exactly how this job is done. Go to market. There's really good companies out there that would specifically do that. And they didn't want to go to market back in the time because before we were there, because they didn't want to, you know, let other people in on their relationship with their contract. There was that sort of, but like you have to get that logic away from it. If you're good enough to do the job and you're good enough to win these contracts, you should have the confidence. And this is like a $50 million turnover business. Right. And so we introduced them to a small contractor who only had probably about 20 people working for them. And we said, look, those guys, that's all they do. That is, they only do that particular work, and that's all they do. So I said, I'm not suggesting that you go with them, but there's an example. So they went out to tender. 3 companies were within the ballpark, and it happened to be that particular company. But that company went from 20 people to over 200 people because they won this contract. Right. You know, very thankful, very grateful, very focused, and had all the right people and the right systems. And so the bigger company were able to pull all their own guys out of the hole, put them back to what they were supposed to be doing, win more work on the core business of what they're actually good at, and then increase obviously their business profit and reputation.
You're expanding your people. It's like they're acting as a general contractor, or what we would call it, where you're expanding the number of people in your organization, and you're going to be more profitable.
Yeah. So that was a safety aspect that brought profitability to the business. And so so now there's your profit center. So nobody can challenge me and say that a safety department can't be a profit center.
I had a similar experience a couple years back where they wanted to hire a less qualified safety professional for a project, and the person non-credentialed, they were looking at upfront dollar costs. They were paying him bare minimum, basically. The bare minimum you could get away with. They thought, it's what I call a donuts and coffee safety professional, right?
Yeah.
They wanted to sit in the office and drink coffee and eat donuts.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
not
don't know what
good.
your equivalent is over in on your in your country, but
Yeah, no, no, a
you
loose
get the idea.
safety officer, yeah, yeah. But like, again, I don't want to give safety people a bad rap because,
Well, that's what they wanted. I'm not saying that that's what they needed.
yeah,
I was able to sell them on getting. So you get somebody, uh, you have to get somebody qualified to do the job who can make decisions.
yeah,
Because then you don't have to involve anybody else, and there's
yeah,
not slowing down the job. The
yeah,
work will be planned out correctly. You don't have
yeah,
to worry about the oversight people. From this was a state job. You don't have to worry about the oversight people coming in, stopping
yeah,
the work. There's, I mean, all you got to do is save on 3 or 4 accidents, and you're already 2 weeks ahead of the game on your schedule.
100%.
Like,
Like,
how much more money you're going to make? And what ended up happening was they went with us, and we were able to save them such
headaches.
money and headaches.
Yeah,
And what ended up happening was it was that job, and there was another job we did that on. I teamed up with another company, and they finished the job 7 months ahead of time by the end of it because there were no incidents, no
yeah,
major incidents, and we were able to plan out the work and have people
and get it going. Yeah.
make this.
Well, like, does the like again time? Like, look at the money that you've saved on time. Because how many times have you seen a safety person not understand the business and sort of going into the wrong areas of the business, looking and doing audits and not really understanding exactly what they're looking at, and they're actually a distraction to the business, and then people get demotivated because you're like, yeah, man, this guy hasn't a clue, or this girl hasn't a clue, or whatever, having a clue, and they're stopping me from working, and which they are, and you know, it's costing the business money, and that's where safety might get a bad rap sometimes, but that's not the safety person's fault. That's the leadership.
No, that's 100% the leadership. I know one of my clients had were deposed. They're involved in a lawsuit, and she had come back to the office. We were out on a project, and she came to a project office because she was psychologically damaged from the whole experience. And my mentor and her mentor are the same person, right? Phenomenal guy, Norman Van Houten. He's a retired PhD in safety, and he and I said, look, Norm is going to tell you the same thing I'm going to tell you. Do you have the authority to hire, fire, discipline, plan out the work, or anything else?
Yeah.
No. I said, well, then how is this accident your quote-unquote fault? I'm not saying the company is not liable, but how is that your personal fault on that? I mean, your personal failing when you don't have the resources to do the job, and your employer will not give you the resources to do the job, whether the resources professional development, actual authority, stop work authority, whatever it is. And she thought about it. I said, don't answer. Think about it for about a minute or two.
Yeah.
She said, you're absolutely right. I don't know. Has that been your experience with that?
Yeah, like as you're talking there as well, there's other things that like this. We could talk here all day.
I know you're on time limit.
No, but no, it's not that at all. Like, like when you start talking about the things that we're talking about now, it actually doesn't. Sometimes it kind of gets to you. Kind of saying to yourself, like, it's so obvious some of the fixes that people can do and companies can do, but yet, there's a kind of a sort of a mentality just to leave it alone, leave it as it is, and don't touch it, because at the end of the day, we have safety in the budget, and we have a person that's allocated to the job, and that's it. And so we don't need to meddle with safety anymore, because we have the safety person, and that's that person's looking after all that. Right.
And so, nobody else has any responsibility on it. No, just the safety.
That's it. And so this is where so we need to get to the hearts and minds of leaders. As safety professionals, we owe it to the safety profession, I believe, across the globe, to get together and start, working with the leaders to sort of bring a new vision of safety, or a new generation of safety, whereby, we're providing more value to the bottom line, and we can show that. But we're also making, the day-to-day stuff fit into the company, so that there's a compliance element, but there's also a commercial element where safety is a commercially viable department within the business. You know, give you an example. For example, you know, I don't see enough of collaboration going on within the industry. So let's take construction, for example. So what would that look like? How would we make a sort of a business case for a project to sort of have this mantra of creating profit centers? Why doesn't all these contractors get together if they're building a housing development outside New York City or whatever else before the job starts? Why don't everybody get together, have a workshop? You know, what do they want to achieve out of the job from all the different angles? And then say to each other, okay, where do we all buy our equipment? Can we get all our data together in terms of where we're all buying PPE and safety equipment and all this kind of stuff? And let's just look at that data as a group, electrical, plumbers, carpenters, the whole lot. And let's, you know, go to one supplier or to 3 or 4 suppliers, get prices from them and say, look, here's the bulk of what we buy on a monthly basis. We'll only buy for you from this project if you're able to drop your rates by X, Y, and Z. But you see, there isn't collaboration.
Right.
Contractors are not collaborating.
So often what happens, I've seen a little bit of that over the years, specifically with PPE, where they have an approved PPE list for a project.
Yeah.
Look, this is and everybody gets together. This is the approved PPE list, and we're buying it from X, Y, and Z company.
Yeah.
Right, sort of thing. I've seen that a little bit, and I've always thought that's a phenomenal idea. That's what we all should be doing.
Do it for training. Do it for, you know, consultancy fees, or bringing in auditors that they want that. And if an auditor is coming in to do an audit on the electrical company, why isn't he doing an audit on the whole site? And therefore, you're getting more bang for your buck. You know, there's loads of things. I think we need to. There's 2 things going on here. There's the leadership model that has to be addressed, and then there's the community model that has to be. And you mentioned community earlier on, and that's what sparked me. It was just straight away. Yeah, we need to have more of a community-driven safety focus on the ground, so that there's more of a collaboration together with companies. Yes, they're fighting for the same jobs, and yes, they, you know, they have their own processes and systems in place. But there's no reason why you can't go in and do a model and say, this particular project is going to be an eco-friendly project from a safety perspective, because we're not going to have loads of different suppliers coming to the job. We're going to have one supplier come to the job, and he's going to have PPE for everybody.
Right. So I think we're going to conclude it right there, but I want to talk to you about something else outside the podcast.
No problem.
So where can someone find you?
So Gavin-Coyle.com, and the site is being rebuilt at the moment. So we're going to have free downloads of templates, forms, procedures. We're going to have free courses that we've developed ourselves. We're also having budget safety courses that you can go and get access to. Obviously, the book, there's a link to the book, and then there's the Business of Safety program, which we're building at the moment. So probably in about next month, the new website will be live. You'll get me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.
Absolutely. That's how you found us. So that is Gavin Coyle. Gavin, this has been great. I hope to have you on again in the very near future. And I thought I actually learned something here today that with this, absolutely, which is what I'm always trying to do. So for Safety Wars, this is Jim Polzel, and we'll catch you on our next program.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic, recording, or otherwise, without prior written permission of the creator of the podcast, Jay Allen.